You're live with Stephen Sacker. Hundreds of thousands of people in Puerto Rico remain without power following a series of earthquakes. At one point, almost 1 million people were without electricity, although the power grid is slowly returning to something like normal. The Caribbean island is still recovering from the effects of a devastating hurricane in 2017. So let us get the latest now on the ground there with CBS reporter David Begnaud, who is in Yauco in Puerto Rico. David, it's been a week of earthquake, then tremors, a great deal of fear in Puerto Rico. What's the situation right now?
Well, Stephen, social media is starting to light up with people who are saying, my power is back on, I'm starting to get my water back. That's the good news. But as you said, the earthquakes continue. I mean, listen, we were awakened by one last night that made us all jump out of bed. And every one of the folks who's here underneath this tent at the Yauco Coliseum has been used to that for the last week. I want you to put yourself in their position for a moment. Imagine if every day for the last week you felt an earthquake that got you out of bed or made you kind of pause or shook your car while you were at a light. That's what these folks are dealing with. As it stands right now, there are tens of thousands of people who are sleeping outside in cots because they feel safer out here than they do in their own home. Why? A lot of the homes in Puerto Rico were not built to code. A lot of the schools in Puerto Rico were not built to code. And as kids prepare to go back to school next week, a lot of parents are wondering, how am I expected to send my child into a building that's 100 years old?
What about the resources of the government? I'm so mindful that Puerto Rico was stretched to the limit by the hurricane just a couple of years ago. Is the government able to cope right now?
Well, look, in fact, that's a good point. I want to show you, as I look down the road, the governor of Puerto Rico is actually pulling out of the Coliseum right now. It was a surprise when she showed up about an hour ago. How are they able to cope? Let me tell you the good news and how things are better today than they were after Hurricane Maria. After Maria, there was arguably a very slow federal response. After the earthquakes, the governor of Puerto Rico filed an emergency declaration request. That's the governor pulling out there. An emergency declaration request with the federal government, and within 8 hours, the president of the United States signed that order. That allows FEMA to move in, provide food, water, life-sustaining things. But it does not allow them to help with generators to boost the power. It does not help with providing people temporary housing. So now the governor's got to go file a major disaster declaration request. And if the president approves that, that's going to open the door to more federal relief. You have to understand the people of Puerto Rico started from a point with a dilapidated, fragile grid. Their infrastructure was crumbling and aged. So the hurricane set them back enormously. They've been trying to rebuild. Their governor resigned a year ago, somebody else took over, and now this earthquake. Stephen, I will tell you this, so many people will stop you on the street and say, I am mentally fried. One woman said to me, you know what I need more than food and water? I need to see a therapist.
One final quick one, David. Puerto Rico has a complicated relationship with the United States government in Washington, D.C. Do the people around you feel neglected by the U.S. government and Donald Trump?
I will tell you, from Hurricane Maria to today, very seldomly do I ever hear the people of Puerto Rico complaining. They are resilient and they are optimistic. You hear their leaders complaining. And I will say, having covered so much of what's happened here within the last 2 years, things seem to be much better today as it relates to the local government's relationship with Washington and the ability to say, hey, we need help, and them saying, we're on our way and we'll get there a lot quicker this time.
David Begnaud, I thank you so much for that fascinating insight into what's going on in Puerto Rico right now. Thanks.